I'm glad that folks are here. I'm glad that we got the input we did via email and otherwise. And folks are asking fair questions. And the questions are basically, what are the rates going to be? What's the revenue balance going to be? How much renewables are we going to have? And what is going to be our choice? The problem we have is that there's a tremendous amount of misinformation, a lot of which is on social media. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to correct some of that. And I'm going to start where Councilmember Petty started. And this spreadsheet has a line item for community choice aggregation, and says that after 30 years, if we did community choice aggregation, we'd be net positive $136,000. The reality is, Marin Choice Energy, after 5 years, is an order of magnitude. In fact, I think 10 orders of magnitude ahead of that. They're at $13.6 million net positive revenue. Sonoma Clean Power, same thing after a couple of years. Lancaster Choice, same thing. And the letter came to all council, including Councilmember Petty, from Lancaster Choice, which said, we kept millions of dollars in our local community as opposed to sending them to Southern California Edison. We covered all our expenses, including overhead reimbursements to the general fund. We ended the fiscal year with a surplus position, revenues over expenses of over $400,000. That's in year one. Year one. So, in order to be opposed to moving forward with this, you would have to discount a mountain of actual real-world data that supports it. And let me list that out for everybody. The success of the Direct Access Program started in 1998 by the state of California, which is so successful and so popular that it's been fully subscribed since it started. You can't get into it. It allows residents and cities to buy power themselves rather than paying retail rates from their for-profit utility. You would have to discount the value that municipal utilities statewide provide to their residents in comparison to the deal that residents like us are getting from Edison, PG&E, and San Diego Gas and Electric. And I would direct all of you to the supplemental that I attached to the agenda, which is available online, and to all of you in the notebook outside. The LA Times in June 2015 reported, based on a survey, that on average, in every rate tier, municipal utilities are providing more value to their residents than for-profit utilities. You would have to discount that every operating CCA right now in the state of California is charging lower rates than the for-profit utility in their area. You would have to discount the growth in the supply of renewable energy, the fact that the market for energy is fundamentally changing. According to the federal government, in 2015, two-thirds of the new energy generating capacity to the grid was wind and solar. 1/3 was natural gas. Virtually zero was coal. Thankfully for all of us and for the planet. You would have to discount that there's a stream of cities across California that are considering starting or joining a CCA or have recently done it. 7 cities alone in Marin Choice Energy, just this past spring. 7 cities. So we're going to be here and we're going to second guess the wisdom of all those 7 cities, in addition to all the other data that I just went through. And then when we get to the question about, is this going to be revenue positive? Is this going to blow a hole in our general fund? You would have to discount the fact that Marin Choice Energy is operating at a net surplus in audited financial statements. Sonoma Clean Power, same thing. Lancaster Choice Energy, same thing. Although I don't think that their current financial statement is audited yet. But you would have to second guess all those agencies and their auditors. You would know better how to read their financial statements about what their cash position is. you would have to discount the projections we've been provided by the experts about what our revenue balance would be for our CCA, which basically says we would have a shortfall of about $450,000 in the first year. And then we would be net revenue positive, like every other CCA going forward. And we would use that revenue to pay back the money that we loaned from ourselves from the general fund to start up the CCA. And then we would be putting it in our pockets and spending it here in Hermosa Beach, rather than sending it up to Edison so that they can pay their CEO $14 million a year. You know how much the Marin Choice Energy CEO makes? $260,000 a year. So if you have a question about why a CCA can charge lower rates, you might want to think about the administrative overhead at Edison versus the administrative overhead at a CCA. There's no comparison between a for-profit entity and a non-profit entity. You don't have to look just at CCAs. You can look at direct access. You can look at all the municipal utilities that the LA Times surveyed just a year ago. You can look at the projections for revenue for what LA County is doing, which say basically the same thing. The same thing as for us. The same thing as for Marin. The same thing as for Sonoma. The same thing as for every other CCA. They are net revenue positive. And that money doesn't go to your for-profit utility. It goes back to your community. So we can spend it on things like fixing your roads, fixing the infrastructure, and doing the other things that we're doing right now and that we want to do more of. Now let's talk about how much renewable energy we're going to get and how we're going to be able to take charge of that. In order to believe that a CCA is not a good thing or isn't going to give you more renewable energy than a for-profit utility, you would have to discount the fact that in reports submitted to the California Energy Commission about the amount of renewable energy they have, that Marin Choice Energy is beating Pacific Gas and Electric by 52% to 30%. You would have to discount the fact that Sonoma Clean Power is beating PG&E by 37% to 30%. And you would have to discount the fact that our consultants are telling us that we can provide 50% renewable energy for 0.5% less for our base rate than what Edison is charging you today for 24% renewable energy. And you would also have to discount a similar projection for the LA County CCA. So lastly, let me talk about choice, because that's what we're talking about. Right now, we don't have any choice. You're born here, you're an Edison customer. And part of your electric bill goes to make sure that Edison CEO gets $14 million a year in salary in total compensation. If we go forward with CCA and we implement it, you'll be opted in, you'll be automatically enrolled in the program by state law, not by our choice, by state law. But you will be able to opt out for free within 60 days of being automatically enrolled, and thereafter for a one-time administrative fee if we set it up like Marin and Sonoma have for $5. Lancaster doesn't even charge an administrative fee to opt out at any time. You will have two choices at any time: Edison or the Hermosa CCA. So there's a lot more to talk about. We'll talk a lot more about it. Information has been provided and misrepresented about what the consultants are telling us in terms of risk, in terms of the nature of the agreements we would sign, in terms of the nature of energy markets. It's all very complex sounding, and these are big numbers. I understand it, that we all want to get comfortable with it. But Edison does the same thing as Marin and as any other utility in the state, whether it's municipal, whether it's for-profit, or whether it's a CCA. They buy and sell power on the California Independent System Operators Exchange. They know what they're doing. They all hire the same consultants, and they're the same consultants that Lancaster has. They know what the cost of power is today. They can project what it's going to be in 2.5 years, in 5 years, and so on, so that you can optimize your contracts with both short-term and long-term to protect yourself. And with the amount of data that we'll have about exactly what our load is, what our energy demand is, we'll pretty well be able to nail the number we need. And every CCA has borne that out in the state. So, I'm going to support it. I'm absolutely supportive of town hall. There's definitely a need to get accurate information out to folks, given the amount of misinformation out there. The postcard you all got was a great thing, and it accurately stated the facts. CCAs have a demonstrated track record of offering lower rates than for-profit utilities, generating revenue that can be used in the local community and providing more renewable energy than their for-profit counterparts. Those are all good things, and I'm very supportive of them. So I will be voting to go ahead with this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Member Tim.